What happened? Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. A third period and game for the ages as the Minnesota Wild storm back to stun the Vancouver Canucks. A game so crazy it requires 2 episodes to break it down, and we will, as well as discussing tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Brandon Duham, and this is Locked on Wild.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet that wins. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we break down a catastrophically crazy 10-7 win for the Minnesota Wild against the Vancouver Canucks. We'll talk about the third period. I don't even know. I'm still a day later trying to struggle through words to describe what happened. We'll talk about the big dogs, as I'm just going to keep calling them, Kirill, Kaprizov, Eriksson, and Matt Boldy. And we'll talk about tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, joined today by Alex Micheletti, a Victory Micheletti Tuesday, and maybe the most celebratory Victory Micheletti Monday or Tuesday we've ever had, because 5-3 was the deficit heading into the third period, and the Wild score 5 goals in 5 minutes. They take an 8-5 lead. They end up winning 10-7. Alex, are you as lost for words describing yesterday's game as I am?
Yeah, I did not see that coming. I did not see that comeback. It seemed like Vancouver had sucked the life out of the Wild, and then they just, by the magic of, they kept getting 5-on-3s, which was unbelievable. I was like, what is Vancouver doing? They just, penalty after penalty, and the Wild took advantage, and the power play was hot. Eck is just. He's raised his game to a whole nother level, and has a career high in goals now. It's just it's unbelievable, and that top line is they've come to play, and now they're only 2 points back of a playoff spot. Who would have ever thought?
Not me, not us. This game reminds me of, I'm going to use a Christmas Story adjective to parallel to describe this game. It reminds me of when Ralphie and his 2 friends get cornered by, I think the kid's name is Scud Farkas. They get cornered by him, and he is pestering them like he normally does with Flick or Flea or whatever the crony's name is. He's just pestering them, and all of a sudden something in Ralphie just snaps, and he's throwing rights, he's throwing lefts, he breaks Scud Farkas's nose, and there's just blood everywhere, and all the kids that are seeing this unfold on the playground are just like, and it gets to the point where his mom comes in to try to break things up, and he's cussing up a storm. This game reminds me of that, because it did feel a little bit like the Wild just got tired of being beaten up on by all these other Western Conference teams. Like, the Wild they were getting chances in the first 2 periods. It's just Philip Gustafsson just didn't have it in this one. He gave up 5, and it seemed like I went back to the goal that the Wild thought they scored to make it 5-4 that got taken off the board. At that point, it seemed like the Wild were like, you know what? We're tired of this. Let's just go punch a team in the mouth. And I know Vancouver did get the 2 goals to cut it to 8-7, but you could have put in an entirely new team. I don't think it would have made a difference. Vancouver just got in the way of a team that wanted to let off some frustration with how some of these games have gone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the one goal that changed everything was the Boldy, the pass off the skate to to Eck, and that going in, that changed the game completely. And thinking they got that, and this was a team that just they were not going to lose that game. They just were determined to, and Vancouver. If you're Casey DeSmith, you got to be so frustrated because some of the goals were just, it was complete puck luck.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to rattle him, and the Wild, took advantage of that, and Vancouver was making just costly mistakes. JT Miller threw one into the stands, and just. It's unbelievable. I was joking too that Marc-Andre Fleury, he made 6 saves and he gets the win. So
he gets the win, and he got a social media post too commemorating the 6 saves that he had. But
what a win!
If you would have told me that Philip Gustafsson would have the better of the day for the goalies, I would have said, I don't think that's possible.
Right?
But they just, and it was something that they were doing early in the game. Like it was very much an effort that, hey, we got to get to the front of the net. We got to get DeSmith's attention focused on one thing and try to kind of chip it past him. The Wild had, by my count, I think like 7 or 8 point blank looks in which they missed the net, whether it be on chip ins or just whiffing on shots. And so the attack was there from the get go. It's frustrating when you only give up 2 shots in the first 14 minutes of a period, and both of them are goals. Like that just, I'm sure, just led to this boil over, and they just went to the same thing almost every goal that they scored down the stretch, and Vancouver was just helpless. And Rick Tocchet looked kind of shell-shocked after the game. I'm sure it's ironic too, because I kind of wondered, and I think Judd Zulgad even said this up in the press box, you're up 2-1, but it felt very much like a period in which Tocchet probably could have laid into his team for they did not play great. Vancouver did not play great in that first period. They played better in the second, but they did not play well in that first period, even though they had the 2-1 lead. And so there were all these signs that the comeback was there for the taking if the Wild wanted it. And we've seen instances throughout the year in which they have not reached up to grab it, but credit to the Wild fully for just grabbing that game, saying we're not giving it back. We don't care if even if Vancouver would have tied it up, I still think the Wild would have won it.
Well, the funny thing about this matchup too is if the Wild make the playoffs, they'd be playing Vancouver. If they get that last wild card spot, Vancouver is the team most likely, unless Vancouver really just drops the ball at the end of the year here. But that's who they would be playing. So Vancouver will remember this one for sure. And Thatcher Demko was not the goalie, so that that might have made a whole lot of difference yesterday. But
I'll take a 7-game series of this.
Yeah.
If the Wild are going to make the postseason, it might as well be against a team that they have had a little bit of success against.
Right.
No to Dallas, no to Winnipeg, no to Colorado, no to Vegas, no to Los Angeles Kings. It might be Vancouver or bust, which probably is indicative of kind of where this team is at and what we think about making the playoffs. But I don't know. And I'm fascinated. I talked about this in the Lockdown NHL show, which will also drop today. I'm going to be fascinated to see how Vancouver reacts to Kaprizov scoring that empty netter with 1.9 seconds left to play. Like,
Yeah. They're going to remember that the next time they play. No
teams
doubt.
don't forget.
No.
Teams do not forget.
No.
And
No,
so just another piece to this, another wrinkle to add to this game that was just, it was hands down. It was the craziest game I've ever seen. The only one that I can think of that even came close was that game against Winnipeg, which I think was 2 seasons ago, in which Joel Eriksson played. He got bumped up to the same line as Kirill Kaprizov and marc-andre. He had a hat trick and the Wild scored like 2 goals, I think, in the final minute to send it to overtime. And then Eriksson completed the hat trick in overtime to win the game. That is probably just right off the top of my head. And if there is a crazier game, feel free to drop it in the comments. That's probably the craziest one I can remember over the last couple of years in terms of like there have been great games, like game 3 of the postseason series against Dallas, where the Wild ran the Stars out of the arena. Those are great games. But if we're talking about chaos games, this is probably top. And that game against Winnipeg is probably second, just right off the top of my head.
Yeah, for me, I was there, but the Gabrick when he scored 5 goals against the Rangers, that was nuts. That's a little bit older, but that was a crazy game. But this one, I mean, I've never seen a game with 3 hat tricks.
No,
like we'll never probably see that again. And then 4 or 5 on 3s for the Wild too, which is that is absolutely insane. It just kept happening, and just at the worst times for Vancouver too. Yeah, just one we'll never forget. And then I mean the 2 empty netters at the end, the Brodin sailing it from the full length of the ice, which is crazy. And Kaprizov just, all right, I'll slam it home too with 1 second left. That was crazy. Just I can't believe that one.
Game had it all. It had it all, including a combined 7 goals and 9 assists for the big dogs, as I'm going to call them. We'll talk about the Wild's top players absolutely standing on their heads over the last 6 games. We'll even look at where they stand amongst the rest of the NHL's greats in terms of points since we went to the second half of the season. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. For instance, if you took the Minnesota Wild to beat Vancouver yesterday, or you took the over, you had just an insane day, and you could have made it an even crazier one if you had taken your bonus bets and put it on anytime goal scorers for Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, Joel Eriksson, Matt Zuccarello, Marco Rossi, Jonas Brodin. Any of those could have made you would be swimming in money. You'd be like Scrooge McDuck jumping into a pool and just swimming through dollar bills had you put any amount on yesterday's game against Vancouver. You can also bet your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot today. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, reminder, we've got tonight's game against Winnipeg. We'll have a postcast for you after the game is done. It may be a little later than we normally go because I'm pulling double duty tonight, but it'll be right around the time that we normally go, if not a little later tonight, but we will still have you covered after tonight's game against the Jets. Before we get to that, though, Alex, let's talk about the big dogs, as I'm calling them. Haven't come up with a great name for that line yet, although somebody called them the Beak line, which is probably the leader in the clubhouse as of right now. But Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and Joel Eriksson in the 6 games since they have united, and some of these points have been power play points. So, you know, the production since they have played regularly together is the key thing here. Joel Eriksson in the 6 games, 7 goals, 5 assists, 12 points. Easy math, that's 2 points per game. Kirill Kaprizov, 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points. Again, 2 points per game. Matt Boldy, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 total points in the 6 games since they started playing together. These guys have just elevated to a different level here, and you know, you see it in just the passing. Like, the one that sticks out to me is against Buffalo, where Matt Boldy had the puck in the defensive zone, lasers a pass up to the top of the Buffalo zone to Kirill Kaprizov, who motors it into the zone. And I still am unclear as to whether or not he was shooting this puck or just kind of lost it, or just intended to try to deke out Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, or UPL, as he was called during the game. I'm still unclear as to if he was shooting that puck or if he just sauced it up to Joel Eriksson to bury the goal. But that's the kind of chemistry that, and you would expect that with your top players playing together on a line. But it's a line that's been a problem for every opponent that the Wild have played, and that success is translated between playing together in 5-on-5 and playing on the power play. Like, they're just possessed right now.
Yeah, Ek is so funny to watch because literally every game he gets under the skin of every team, and it's amazing. And you know, he was drawing penalties because of it, you know, yesterday, and you know, he's just getting to the right areas to score. I mean, he's getting to where Zach Parise used to score all of his goals, and you know, he just he complements Boldy and Kaprizov with their skills so well. And you know, he's becoming a power play force. It's incredible. He's up there with you know, some of the best in the game. So you know, kudos to John Hines to putting them together, because I don't know where this team would be recently if he didn't do that. So big credit for, you know, making that decision. And you know, the rest of the team is just following you know, their way. You know, we joke that Freddie Gaudreau and Marcus Johansson, they have their Tony Snell games are basically no production, and so it's good that the top line is coming to play. And you know, another guy that's been playing really well is Marco Rossi too. Mm-hmm. Just he's really playing with a lot of confidence. You know, it's great to see. And you know, Jonas Brodin and Brock Faber continue to be locked down, you know, when they need to be. So it's yeah, it's gonna be a chaos. You know, yesterday was chaos. We got another division game tonight, and you know, there's like 3 or 4 teams battling for the last spot, and some of these teams they seem like they've completely fallen out of it. The Coyotes have lost 10 in a row. It's that's unbelievable. The Blues are a weird team. They beat teams that they should beat, and then lose to others that they shouldn't lose to. Nashville's a weird team. You know, Seattle, who knows? Seattle's such a wild card. It's gonna be crazy. The Kings, they looked left for dead, but since the coaching change, they've played extremely well. So this last spot is just, it's gonna be something else.
Calgary, who I had officially completely written them off, and then they go and they beat Winnipeg yesterday.
Not only do they beat Winnipeg, they beat Hellebuck, who's been a Vezina all year, which is what. So the Wild probably get Broussard tonight, but
they do.
Yeah, so I mean, it's you can't make it up. This season's been crazy.
It has been insane, and we remember the slow starts for Kaprizov, for Boldy, this season. Well, I looked yesterday. Kirill Kaprizov is on pace. Again, on pace doesn't mean he's going to get there,
Right.
but he is on pace right now for 34 goals and 85 points in a season in which he looked like he looked like he wasn't going to be able to make it through the rest of the season at the beginning of the year, and he's on pace for 85 points. Joel Eriksson on pace for 42 goals, 76 points. Matt Boldy's on pace for 30 goals, 66 points. And so, like, the numbers for Boldy since Hines took over, I think it's 19 goals and 18 assists in 36 games since Hines took over. Like, these guys just continue to get it done. And further point to that is where they stand amongst the rest of the NHL. Eriksson is 4th. Kaprizov is 5th. Boldy is 6th in points in the entire NHL since February 7th, since they started playing together as a line. Like, that's what you need from your top level players. But as you alluded to with Freddie Gaudreau and Marcus Johansson, who we'll talk about more in a little bit here, if this team is going to be able to sustain this, they're going to need the rest of the lineup to follow suit. Like, you gotta get a little more from the second line. And Matt Zuccarello was better against Vancouver. He had a 4-point night himself, but he was very quiet against Buffalo. Like, they have. I'm to the point where I think you have to try, unless there's a clause in Marcus Johansson's contract where if he plays below top 6, his cap number elevates to like $58 million. Unless there's some stipulation in there like that, I'm to the point where I think you got to try it, because it's one thing to say that a player is skating well. That's great. Awesome. But if you're not contributing at all, like, that's a problem. That's something that just has to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen, if the Wild do make the playoffs, it's could probably be Vancouver and Rick Tocchet. They're gonna. Yesterday's game is not going to be a playoff game. I mean, yeah, you're going to have low scoring, and I mean, they are going to shut down. They're going to do their best to shut down that top line, and so then you're going to have to get production from that second line and third line. Fourth line, it's a wild card, but the second and third lines are going to have to do more than what they're doing right now, because, as we've seen with the Wild, they've just in the past their top lines have been invisible in the playoffs. So they're going to need a lot of help there.
But as we'll talk about here, as we preview tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets, Freddie Gaudreau and Marcus Johansson may offer the best chance in terms of scoring goals here tonight. And you're probably listening to this like, what are you talking about? Don't worry. I've got a stat for that we will share as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is also brought to you by GameTime. Folks, the temperatures are way above where we normally are at in the winter, which means this is definitely going to continue, which means that it is getting closer to spring and summer concert time. And there's no better way to give a friend or a family member a gift than to buy them tickets to their favorite bands. Kenny Chesney's headed to the US Bank Stadium in May. Maybe you want to go there. I certainly would love to. And GameTime can help make your ticket buying experience as stress-free as possible. GameTime can offer you last-minute ticket deals. Plus, they show you your view from every seat in the venue. And not only that, no more hidden fees that pop up at the end of your transaction. What you pay is shown clearly in front of you, so you don't have anything unexpected pop up when you hit the checkout line. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Seth Topal joined by Alex Micheletti as we shift our focus now to tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets. Jets have had the Wild's number so far this season as they have beaten them in both matchups. I remember vividly that we got to the point where we're like, hey, opportunity for the Wild to come a knock in here if they can win one of these games against the Jets. They were within like 2 points of climbing into the third spot in the Central. And we all know what happened after that. Kirill Kaprizov got hurt. Wild lose both ends of that doubleheader against the Winnipeg Jets. And now the Wild find themselves 2 points out of a playoff spot with, again, another pivotal have-to-have, absolutely got-to-win-it game against the Winnipeg Jets. Because, Alex, all we've asked all season, every time the Wild get into a position like this where it's like, hey, we're back, we're ready to be a playoff team again, they get face-stomped by Arizona, by Dallas, by Colorado, by whoever, Calgary even. And so these 7 games in which the Wilds won the first, these 7 games represent an opportunity for the Wild to finally get us to say, okay, we believe you now. If you can go through this stretch reasonably well, we'll be maybe ready to buy in. And so it's another big game, especially coming off of an highly emotional win against Vancouver. Like, you got to be on your guard in this one against the Jets.
Yeah, there could be a lot of drama coming tonight too. I mean, with the whole Ryan Hartman, Cole Perfetti back and forth. So I would expect maybe that they try to get Hartman going because there's no Foligno or Pat Maroon. So Hartman seems like the logical choice for a throwdown tonight, or Bogosian. So keep an eye out for that. Especially, it'll be interesting to see who's in the lineup for Winnipeg or not. Imagine if Logan Stanley's out there tonight, which he most likely could be. So
Brendan Dillon, I'm sure will be.
Yeah. So yeah, just all the suspects of taking down Kirill in the past. So yeah, there's lots on lots on the line tonight, and it's going to be the battle of the backup goalies, Bersaw and Fleury. So it's weird calling Fleury a backup goalie, but that's what he is on this Wild team, or a 1B. And both teams on the back end of a back-to-back, and so there could be some tired legs, back and forth. Winnipeg also has Sean Monahan now, which the Wild have not seen on the Jets since they just acquired him recently, and he had a hat trick in the first period yesterday, and they still lost, which is just crazy to think. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he looks tonight out there. He's always played well against the Wild, going back to when he was with the Flames. So yeah, lots of intrigue tonight, and hopefully the Wild top line can keep it going, and the power play can stay hot, because I think there's going to be a lot of penalties in this game, just, with tired legs and, the chirping that's going to occur tonight.
And if you look at this season, at least, the 2 Wild players who have scored the most against the Winnipeg Jets, it's Freddie Gaudreau, who has 3 points in the 2 games, and Marcus Johansson has 2 points in the 2 games. And so maybe
this is the spark they need.
Maybe this is the opportunity to get them going. Hat trick game for Freddie Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson. If we have any sort of statistical oddity, and I'm including this in the John Merrill hat trick category, any further hat tricks the rest of the season, and I will do that Pocky chip challenge for an episode, the chip that has been banned by the FDA. I'll do it. So don't make me sweat that, Freddie or Marcus Johansson, in tonight's game.
Oh man, that would be something.
What's going to happen is one of them will score 2 goals in the first period, and I'll be like, "Can you not?"
You'll be sweating.
It'll be an interesting game, to say the least. And let's also give a quick shout out to Declan Chisholm, who has played in the last 2 games. I thought he looked really good against Buffalo. I thought he looked fine against Vancouver. Maybe
he slipped on that one play that I thought was going to turn into a goal, but he looks like a natural out there, and just very smart and savvy.
Smooth with the puck, and he's got a rocket of a wrist shot, which definitely translates. So
it just now that the Jets is the opponent tonight too, it could be a Chisholm revenge game.
28 minutes against the Jets.
I still don't understand how they let's keep Logan Stanley, a pylon, out there over this guy, Declan Chisholm. I know he's he's played 6 NHL games now, but I mean, he looks like the real deal out there. So I don't know what their decision making was with keeping Logan Stanley over him. But so we'll see if he gets a revenge game tonight.
We will find out, but we'll have you covered all throughout the week here. We'll have you covered after tonight's game as well. Again, might be a little later than we typically do our postcast, but we'll still fire one up. I've got double duty here tonight, but I'll be keeping an eye on the game as well. So that's our episode for today. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already, so that you don't miss out on any future episodes here on Locked On Wild. You can find new episodes plus pre and post game content all week long as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.